Some of the content covered may be graphic in nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Midnight, December 3rd, 1984. One of the world's worst industrial disasters to date takes place. A pesticide plant in Bhopal, India leaks a gas called methyl isocyanate and is exposed to more than 500,000 people. The plant was owned and operated by the chemical and consumer goods conglomerate Union Carbide Corporation.
So welcome back to Type 3 TV. I'm your host, John Baczynski, alongside Dan Rady.
What is up?
And Buddha.
What's up?
So, Dan, what got you interested into this subject?
So with Union Carbide, it went back to, obviously, I don't remember the disaster. That happened, I was way too young when that happened, so I don't know anything about that. But it goes back to when I was younger and I'd buy batteries for my, my toys. Like my, remote control cars, any kind of toy stuff. I used to have BMX bikes. I was big into BMX, so I'd have it was called chrome polish in a little can made by Simonize. And then I would see, Prestone antifreeze on shelves. So you got to remember, in the late 80s, early 90s, there was still a lot of new, old stock on shelves.
Yes.
So I noticed a Union Carbide always being listed, their little logo.
Right.
And I said, wow, this company is just huge. They make everything. Well, as the decade ended, I noticed that Union Carbide was no longer listed, or not. It just disappeared. And as a kid, even I wondered, how did they just, this big, huge company just disappear? Obviously, I was still too young to realize, well, maybe they got bought out, maybe this or whatever. So I just forgot about it. That was the end of it. Fast forward to the internet age, about 4 or 5 years ago, something hit me, and I'm like, let me look up Union Carbide again. And then that's when I Googled it and I realized about the Bhopal, India disaster. And then it all, of course, fit into place. Obviously, what happened, this horrible event took place, and the company lost. They had obviously not lost, but they had to sell everything or they were going to go out of business. So that's where I got interested in it, because it stemmed way back as a kid when I would notice Union Carbide on everything. And then, as time went on, I was able to look up and see, oh, okay, so this is what happened at Union Carbide. And the story is fascinating. It's a horrible, horrible, tragic event, all that loss of life. But when you look into it and read into what we were talking about in the narration, Union Carbide could have prevented it, it sounds like. And, it was just a very storybook example of corporate greed. They probably could have did more than they did, didn't feel like they should or couldn't, or wouldn't want to spend the extra millions of dollars to keep the maintenance up on the plant, and hundreds of thousands of people lives were impacted.
So looking at some of these stats here, I think like over 500,000 people directly impacted with either injury or death. It said I think 2,000 people died right away, and around another 3,000 in the next 2 weeks.
About 8,000 actually.
Oh, is it? Yeah, no, 8,000 died within 2 weeks. Yeah, so I mean, for 8,000 people,
right?
That's a lot of. It's hard to even wrap your head around like that many people dying just because of one thing,
one event.
And if you look at like 9/11, I think 3,000 people died.
Over 3,000.
Yeah, and so almost 3 times the amount of that.
Right.
It's insane.
And then all the, like we said, all the disabling effects that happen.
Yeah.
For people that are still dealing with that now. Yeah.
And also to mention what happens when something chemically happens in the atmosphere, and how quickly it can impact life. And that's why I think the UN has a ban against chemical weapons, because it's different tactical warfare and shooting someone and killing them with a bullet versus you get some sort of chemistry involved that could kill you instantly. Right. It's I don't know. It's just strange, how the world views that versus gun warfare in another way. But
when you get that involved, it's not even just the people. It's killing the land, killing the wildlife, killing the insects. That entire habitat has the potential to just disappear. And if you're killing certain insects that are in that area, is that going to impact another species somewhere else that feeds off of that particular area? Like you look at somewhere like Chernobyl, that's still radioactive.
Right.
The wildlife just now within the last couple of years has started to return very, very slowly. And that was 40 years ago or
86, right?
But even so, like, people won't be able to live there for thousands of years.
Oh, no.
Right.
I think they said
Right.
2,000 years before.
2,000 years. I mean, like, if you think about really history as it's written, it's hard to find documents that are older than like that. So it's like you must have to go like another civilization before
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I think also you were talking about like negligence is kind of what brought this on. The scary part about that is, if negligence is what caused this and the leaders being negligent caused this, now 24 of the executives that were running the company in general have bought the company that just let this happen. So the people that had a hand in running it before have now taken over a part of it again.
That's a good point. They bought, Union Carbide stayed on its own. They bought the home and automotive division, which was the Prestone antifreeze, Simonized car wax, Glad garbage bags, and a couple more. And they actually owned STP Oil too. STP Oil Treatment. They actually bought them in '84, right prior to this happening. So they sold. That also went to First Brands too. We didn't mention that, but they bought those divisions. They're not divisions. They bought that whole home and automotive division, and like you said, part of they weren't the upper management. They were project managers and higher ups, but they weren't like the board of directors. That Union Carbide kept going after the fact. But you're right, though. Who knows what part they had?
It still makes you wonder if, like, what if they were doing something shady in their division and now they're yet running the same company again.
Right.
It's crazy too. Like when you're a kid, you think like, oh, this company does just this and this company does that.
Right.
And when you really start to pull back and like look at the 30,000-foot view, like 10 companies run everything in the entire world. Like,
Right.
Or how things just get traced back to like a very small group of things. And it's like, got this club and this club here and this club, and guess what? You ain't in it.
Right. And in Union Carbide, before this happened, they were, and this is just the consumer products that we're talking about.
Right.
There was an industrial and commercial divisions of Union Carbide. I think 10 or 15 of those divisions that most normal people wouldn't know about unless they were in the chemical industry or commercial.
Yeah.
But there's a lot. It was such a huge conglomerate. They even said in history that the company was going to have to be reorganized eventually because it was just getting too big for its own good. Well, obviously.
What did it start out as? Like when you go back to their beginning, and not just the disaster, but like, what was the I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. What was their like initial product or what? Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
that led to this big conglomerate.
Well, I know they owned Eveready batteries for a long time. They started off as National Carbide. That's what their original name was.
Yeah.
And National Carbide merged with another company, and I apologize, I forgot the name, and then they turned it into Union Carbide. They started with batteries. They were involved in mining. There was actually a mining disaster. It might have been in the 30s that Union Carbide was involved in too. I don't know if there was any negligence to that, but if you look in the history, there was a couple of little things that Union Carbide's history was a little, spotted there, or whatever you want to call it. But that's not the right word to say. Spotted.
No, yeah, it was a little shady.
Yeah,
little
here,
shady,
if you go back to the beginning, it says founded in 1917 as the Union Carbide and Carbide Corporation, Yeah, it says here, founded in 1917 as the Union Carbide and Carbide Corporation, from a merger with National Carbon Company. The company's researchers developed an economical way to make ethylene from natural gas liquids such as ethane and propane, giving birth to the modern petrochemical industry. And so, chemistry is just something that freaks me out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy. Like how clean it can be. Like think about like soap, and when they make that, what goes into making like soap, and like is it a very dirty process, like making oil and like these sort of things? It's a dirty process, but yet like clean oil, clean energy. Like, is some of this stuff as clean as they proclaim it to be?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't.
And yes, before anyone starts chiming in, yeah, I understand like solar, wind is clean energy. I'm saying like as far as a clean oil or a cleaner oil.
Right.
Yeah, I
How
think
dirty
that,
of a process is that?
I think that's when they say clean, they literally just mean cleaner than its predecessor.
So you actually have some stuff here that is from that company.
Yeah. We recently purchased these off of eBay. Have an old Energizer flashlight here, vintage, and this you probably can't see it on camera.
What's
but this has
the country of origin?
It was actually made in the U.S.
Okay, that one?
Yep,
Yeah.
made in the U.S. It's got the Union Carbide logo right here on it. We also have a very old pack of Ever-Ready batteries, and these, of course, were made by Union Carbide. And then Bodyguard Simonized car wax, and also made by Union Carbide. These are just a few of the many, many, many products that
Metal product in a cardboard box too.
Yeah, that great. You got you don't make them like this anymore.
No.
There you
I
go.
want
Get
like,
out. There you go.
like okay, yeah. So Simonized car wax, stuff that you use to clean your car with.
Yep.
How clean is it to manufacture that?
Actually, back to the disaster.
Yeah.
Speaking of negligence, how far out, like, did the gas actually go? Did it make it into the city?
Oh, it made it into the city. I don't know the exact perimeter or the radius of how far it went out. I didn't look into that. I do know that the people obviously surrounding the plant got it the worst, obviously. The ones that didn't have cars to get into, I mean, some people jumped in their cars and got out of there. They were okay. But most of the people were started running from their houses. And when you run, what happens?
You're breathing in more
You're breathing in
oxygen.
more oxygen.
Right.
So they unfortunately died very quickly because of that. And then the kids, obviously little kids, the gases stayed lower to the ground, so they also perished very
The
quickly.
gas was very heavy.
It was a heavy, yeah, and it
What did it was? You couldn't see it, or
I believe it was. Again, I apologize. I don't know. I think it was more of a fog style.
so it might not even have looked like anything weird.
It might not have. Yeah, I think there was some kind of density to it, but I don't know exactly. I never heard what. Maybe some of the viewers will let us know, but I don't know.
I know somebody that went to India for a church mission, and like they took a picture of the electrical poles there. Like, it is an electrician's worst nightmare. Like, everything is just spliced in. Brownouts are like just a normal occurrence there because it's just everybody's just spliced in, and it's not done very clean. I imagine that like somewhere around like a plant like this, it just looks like Los Angeles on its worst day.
Oh, I'm sure of it. And the thing,
And that's a normal day,
Right. And the thing too was they had two alarms. They had an alarm system in this plant. But initially there was one alarm that was internal for the factory, and then one that was external. Well, the one initially they would go off at the same time, so it would alert the people on the outside, and there was nothing really going on.
People, they would just think, oh, well,
Right.
no, business as usual.
But so what happened was they disconnected that alarm for the outside, so that when the interior one would go off, it didn't alarm the outside people because it didn't affect them. Nothing was going to happen. But what happened was they disconnected that, and of course the alarm didn't go off when it should have, which didn't give the people enough time. More negligence.
And that's scary enough that you're living next to somewhere that has to have an external alarm because you're at risk, even though you're not in the building. Like the Perry power plant.
Yeah.
Any power plant, really. But
Sure.
it's just scary to even think that you're living next to that.
Oh yeah, no, you don't really think about that, but yeah, if a meltdown happens, I mean,
And
We're
Perry's
even
not
in the-
that far from here.
I'll say
yeah,
we're
it's like
still in
an
that.
hour. Yeah,
What, 75 miles, I think.
No, I think
Radius.
Oh yeah, no, it's and think about what happened in Japan. What was that? A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Where that
The
power
earthquake
plant
caused it.
Yeah, and then the power plant melted down. But so yeah, over 500,000 people impacted by one thing
One
that
event.
probably just started with negligence at the very baseline of this, and just how something can basically balloon and snowball to all roads lead to this one point, and then it affects hundreds of thousands of people. It's really sad, and I think there's some justice to be had there. And you said in the clip, like, there's a guy that he was supposed to get extradited from the U.S., but they ended up not doing it, and so like no justice. Yeah, no justice, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that were pissed about that.
Oh, the whole Indian government, all the people of India still consider him a not war criminal, but a criminal for wrongful death.
So they basically just paid out a bunch of money, dismantled the company, but nobody ever really got in
and
trouble.
didn't even Union Carbide still exists under Dow.
But it kind of systematically was dismantled.
It divested all the right.
But nobody ever got in real trouble.
No, the CEO lived to be in his 90s. He just passed away.
And it only paid out like in the hundreds of millions. It didn't pay out any like billions. Like think about like
in today's money, it would have been like almost $2 billion.
Oh, really?
In today's money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was.
Well, I guess with inflation,
right
at the time, yeah.
Right.
And like life is so, for lack of better words, like precious. Like I don't think money can equate, but at the same time, like it just didn't seem like a whole lot just for these people, and that's really sad.
Well, it's because somebody here just wrote a check and carried on with their life.
Right.
All right. Well, that's frustrating. So, Union Carbide disaster. Dan, thanks for the story.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
If you like what you saw, please hit like, share, subscribe, and comment below. From The Mistake on the Lake, for Dan Rady, Buddha, Jason Markovitz, I'm John Budzinski. This is Type 3 TV. Over and out.